Here we go. Hi, and welcome back to This Week in Voice, Season 6, Episode 6. Today is Thursday, February the 3rd. My name is Bradley Metrock. I'm CEO of Project Voice, a company that accelerates the growth and adoption of voice and conversational AI. We're thrilled to be joined today by a really phenomenal panel and talking through some interesting stories. I'm going to ask each one of these folks to introduce themselves. And Naresh, I'm going to start with you. Tell us who you are, tell us who you work for, tell us all about yourself.
So I'm excited to be on this show. So I'm Naresh, and I'm based out of San Francisco. I work for the company called TransPerfect, which has been the market leader in translations and localizations forever. It was started in 1992, and then 3 years ago, they found a need in the artificial intelligence machine learning space. So we started a division called DataForce, and I actually work for that division as one of the directors. And what DataForce does is we provide training data to build machine learning models. And we also do all kinds of supportive services that is needed for the training data for building any kind of machine learning model that is available right now in the industry. We work on text, audio, video, and images as well.
Awesome. Naresh, it's a privilege to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
You got it. Our next guest is Johan Strömberg of Wanderword. Johan, say hello.
Hello, hello.
Thanks for being here. Wanderword, super interesting group. Tell us who you are. Tell us what you do.
Thank you. Super excited to be here. So my name is Johan Strömberg. I'm out of Stockholm, Sweden. Wanderword was a company founded about 3 years ago. We do interactive audio experiences for the speakers out there, Alexa and Google, but also now for mobile phones. And in the line of development of these, we also realized that we needed to use other tools to get out on more platforms. So we built our own platform called Fabella, where you can actually build these experiences with interactive audio, where you steer the experience with your voice, and you can come out to all platforms, more or less. You can go out to web, Alexa, Google. So a lot of our customers feel that they don't have the time to spend developing for each and every platform. So now they can develop once and release it on every one.
Perfect. Yeah. And Johan, we appreciate you taking the time and appreciate what you're doing with Wanderword as well. Very needed organization. And finally, Liz Persaud. Tell me if I'm pronouncing that right. Liz, it's great to have you on the show.
Yep, you've got it, Bradley. Hey, everyone, I'm Liz Persaud, and I am thrilled to be here with you. I work in the space of assistive technology and disabilities. For 21 years, I've worked with a federal program called Tools for Life, and we are the Assistive Technology Act program in Georgia. I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Every state, as well as territory, has an Assistive Technology Act program. And basically what we do is we inform people with disabilities, their support circles, professionals that support them, all about technology that can benefit them in their life. So as somebody living with a disability, I use so many pieces of technology and use my voice every day to be fully independent. So it's been absolutely transformational. And I also just work in the space of adults living with neuromuscular disabilities. That is something that I have in my life. And again, just educating about independence, technology, and just the marriage of that and what it can really do to benefit not only people with disabilities, but everyone when we think about universal design. So again, just really happy to be here with y'all.
No, that's great. Yeah, we appreciate you setting the time aside, and I put you last for the intros because I'm going to put you first for starting with our first story. Okay, Liz, thanks for joining us as well. So with that, we're going to get to the news, and we've got 4 really interesting stories here, and I'm going to read the headline of the first one here, and we'll get rolling. Jaguar Land Rover adds Amazon Alexa voice control as standard. So I started with this, the story we'll talk about next has to do with Apple, and there's a ecosystem conversation there. But this one I think is interesting because it comes amidst, there's this undercurrent of whining and complaining I'm seeing about the Alexa ecosystem, and some claims that it's getting worse. And maybe it's Bezos leaving, or who knows what it is, but Alexa, according to a lot of things I've seen, is not working as well as it has in the past. I don't know, how to even start measuring that, but I've seen some people talking about it. But it sure hasn't kept them from a Terminator-like acquisition of business in the automotive sector. So, Liz, I want to start with you. Your thoughts on everything you do with an accessibility mindset, and just everything you do in general. Give me your comments on just the Alexa ecosystem, and then this story in particular, using Alexa in the car. What stands out to you as being the most important part of the story?
Sure. And it's kind of funny because as we're talking, all my devices are going to go off this next hour that we're here hanging out together, which is awesome because I've got every single one set up for everything in my life. This article I thought was really interesting. As somebody living with a disability, I was born with spinal muscular atrophy, diagnosed at 9 months. I just turned 43. Technology has been an awesome aspect in my life for independence. And again, especially for individuals living with neuromuscular disabilities, we rely on our voice, we rely on switches, we rely on making sounds to make things happen in our life, especially as we're looking at progressive diseases. So when it comes to Alexa and just the Amazon ecosystem, there's been so much of that that's been a game changer for me. I use it to control my television, my entertainment. If I just want to watch Food Network, I can say, turn on Food Network. I can get on, Netflix and, say, play Stranger Things season 2 episode, what have you, and it does it seamlessly. What I like about this article is just the marriage of transportation and these smart systems. Transportation in general is just interesting, and it's complex for folks with disabilities. Transportation isn't always easy, even public transportation. I absolutely cannot wait for the day that I can roll into a vehicle and say, take me to Atlanta, take me to my favorite restaurant, take me to the grocery store. I don't think that that's far-fetched away. The article just talks about, being able to start your car, the music, right? Just being able to interlay that into your automotive experience when you're on the road. But again, I am excited to see that go even further, to be able just to use your voice to navigate your world really and truly. I think about little things of, caregivers getting me up in the morning and what that means for the time frame. Sometimes my morning to get ready for work can be up to 5 hours. And sometimes that includes transportation getting into work, right? So how awesome would it be just to be able to add that to that pocket of independence, to really be able just to make that seamless. So there's some videos out there in the world. There's a individual who is blind who is using a prototype and driving to Taco Bell to get a taco. And I just think that's absolutely incredible. And just to see the joy on his face to be able to do that, right? That's things that many of us take advantage of every day, right? So.
No, that's great. So from an accessibility standpoint, there's no perceived change in the Alexa ecosystem. It's just all very valuable. And I think that's a great, realization for something like this. Naresh, I'm going to turn to you. So, this story and just the idea of having Alexa in the car or any voice system in the car, obviously it's data heavy, something that you think about. As you took a look at this, what stood out to you? Anything about Alexa specifically, or about the use case, or give me your thoughts?
Well, this is a super interesting use case for us because in-car data collection that could be used for an Alexa or any voice system has been one of the most expensive ones that you can actually get. And the reason behind is that when you use an Alexa inside your house, the house is quiet and maybe a noise of your pressure cooker or the alarm would be the only disturbances you have, or kids running around. So you can recreate having data collected inside a controlled setting easily, versus when you're actually trying to get data from a car. Think about it. You have an ambulance noise. You have, rolling carts that are making noises. You have so many other, you might be next to a concert and you're trying to get the data from a concert that is actually, or you could be next to a rally. So you have to collect data in various environments to be able to actually work efficiently. And in every product lifecycle, it's interesting that you said people are not using Alexa that much. I mean, the Alexa hasn't been, leveraged that much in the current day world, because in any product life cycle, if you see there's introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. And I think every time there is maturity, no matter if it's Alexa or any other voice assistant in the market, is coming up with a new product that engages us to actually keep us there. And it takes time. And some of these projects have taken years for them to develop. And I think the states that they've actually introduced it into the cars right now is amazing. And I think we're going to see more coming up in the future.
That's great. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And yeah, it's a use case that's not going anywhere for sure. And Johan, I'm going to turn to you as the person out of the three here that are probably the closest from a professional standpoint to the Alexa ecosystem. Is it your perception that the Alexa ecosystem is as strong and vibrant as it always has been, or are there cracks in the foundation? And any other comments you have on the story?
Well, if you start, picking the wound, you're going to see blood eventually. So if I did analyze Alexa all over the place, there's going to be parts that I don't like. But in general, I would say that, taking it to the car was more or less that we expected. It's going to be a battle in between a few combatants. One of them is going to be Google and one's going to be Alexa. I do agree with the problematics in the cars, that you have a lot of sound and things disturbing that we haven't really seen yet. So I don't think you can just take these skills and everything they have today and just put it in the car and it will be working. We work with that problematics every day, because we want to develop games that are able to be used by people who cannot see, and we want it to be able to be used by people driving. So we have a saying about both hands on the wheel and eyes on the road. And therefore, and we see that a lot. We're talking to different car manufacturers. We hear them say that, and entertainment is great, but it needs safety comes first. And we've seen this with self-driving cars like Tesla and all different kinds of cars, that they're very, very thorough about safety. So looking at this particular article, I thought that this is, it was weighted. There's going to be more. Almost every car is going to have it. There's going to be a period until we feel it's really safe. If you've ever been in a self-driving car, you're scared to death, because eventually it's going to come up something from the side of the road, or something is raining, and it's like Jurassic Park, where the world is going to change and eventually the car is going to crash. So it's a love and hate relationship with self-driving cars. And I think it's great that we're now coming to the part that going into a car, you more or less know that you can talk to it, and it helps so much. Either if you're in a situation where you can't do anything but talk, or if you just want to be convenient, it's great, and I'm looking forward to it. When it comes to the infotainment system that they have, I think we're going to see different types of games due to what I said in the beginning with security.
Yeah, no, that's great. So what I hear from y'all is whatever whispers are out there about the Alexa ecosystem are, really not showing up very visibly. Alexa still is an incredibly important, ecosystem, making a lot of progress, and obviously this story is all about it. That Jaguar Land Rover thinks they're a perfectly fine partner. Thank you very much. And so, and we've seen a bunch of those. We've seen a lot of stories over the last 3 to 6 months about different cars integrating voice in more evolved ways with different partners. Some cases big tech like Google or Amazon, other cases more independent partners like Cerence. But a good place to start. Any closing comments on that? It segues well into the next story, which is really where I want to spend the bulk of the time, because it's kind of interesting. I'm going to read the headline for this. And this is from Fast Company. Apple was a smart speaker laggard, but its strategy is working. So, part of the issue with Alexa that I've been seeing people talk about is that some of the commands aren't working as well. And like I said, who's to say? But the fact is that Alexa and Google Assistant have broad purviews of countless things that somebody has to be thinking about. Every vertical interacts with these voice assistants in different ways. So countless employees, countless teams working on, improvement, continuously improving these things. And the argument this article makes is really fascinating, because on this show, we're in 6 seasons of this now, and we've been ripping on Apple for all 6 of them for the poor performance relative to the others of Siri. But now here comes an article saying that that's an asset. And Naresh, I want to start with you with this, and then Johan and Liz, I'll go to you. The point this article makes is that a weakness of Siri is a strength, in that it's actually the focus. It's this device is focused properly on one particular thing, and that works. What do you agree with that premise, that that Apple's singular focus and maybe not working on everything under the sun is a benefit? And what else did you take from this piece?
Well, I think it's like a yes and a no kind of a deal. Yes, their strategy is probably working, but you have to understand Alexa is the first to market. Even though Google stands equal with Alexa now, you're not going to, you never mention Google, you're mentioning Alexa constantly. And that is because it's become a household name. And the concept that Apple is coming out with the new speaker doesn't put them anywhere behind, because Alexa, when they were creating it, they made so many mistakes. And now the newer speaker companies that are coming out, they can avoid those mistakes, because the people who worked for Alexa are the ones that are actually working for Apple or Google, or they understand, okay, what are the types of mistakes they've made in terms of data collection, and what are the types of mistakes they've made in terms of correlating this data, where a normal human being can interact with it like another person rather than a voice bot. And if you noticed it, you just don't say set an alarm at this time. You can easily say, hey, wake me up at so and so time, and Alexa is going to wake you up. And that's where Apple is coming in. But they're also putting so much money into the advanced, because they're coming late in the market. They have to put extra money in advancing or refining the data that they're actually getting. So I don't see them behind or ahead in terms of the competition.
And I'm going to stay on you a second, because I want to ask a follow-up here. So, I think there's kind of two theories emerging, about, I guess, what we'll call AI for the purpose of this conversation. Either you can, for AI to become, I hate to use the word sentient, but why don't we use the word contextual? For AI to really benefit you, and to be proactive, and rather than just reactive all the time, and to be additive to us as human beings, either you can accumulate so much data that, and you can ramp up that data mountain, and you can scale it, and you can accumulate so much data until you finally reach the inflection point of sentience or sufficient amount of context to where the computer can finally understand you enough to really serve you. But here we have kind of a different theory in this article that's sort of talked about in a roundabout way, where, you know what, forget all that. Let's just focus on this. To make AI really good and to make technology work in a way that serves the user best, it's really a function of doing the precise opposite, and it's narrowing the focus as laser-like as we can get it to smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, to where we finally serve the customer that way. We've eliminated everything to where we can't possibly screw it up, and the computer can serve the user. Do you agree with that? That's a dichotomy here. What are your thoughts on that?
So when we start talking about data, there's two kinds of data in the market right now. One is unstructured data and one is structured data. So when people talk about actually narrowing down whatever they're doing, that is them structuring the data in a particular fashion to actually use it for any use case. In this example, a voice bot use case, you could have countless amount of, you can have data from 1 million homes speaking every day about various stuff. But if all that unstructured data is not going to be useful for the functions that you want the voice bot to actually perform. So all these companies have data. In fact, 80% of the data out there in the world is unstructured, and everybody is actually racing to structure this data for specific use cases. So to answer your question, if we're going to get to that centennial point by getting the data structured, and whoever can do it faster, more efficiently, is going to be the winner out there.
No, well said. Yeah, and so thanks for letting me stay on you for another moment there. Johan, I want to turn to you and get your thoughts on this article as well. I don't think Wanderword has done much with the Apple ecosystem. It'll be interesting to get your thoughts on. Do you kind of buy into what this piece is selling, that, hey, let's take Apple seriously with this, or do you see it as a sign of weakness? Your thoughts when you look at this?
Well, I mean, it's really interesting to see more people coming on to the playing field, so to speak, and it's anticipated. We all know that the French is going to come up with their own version of this because that's what they do, but I welcome that, because to us it's more or less not the technology. We can use either one of them, which has volume, and I believe the ones that are going to get the volume is, I'm sorry to say this, but the technology part is not the hard part here. Obviously it's not easy, but it's not the hardest part. The hard part is to get good software that people want to use. I think we are in the same area as when the mobile phones came along. They didn't grow as much as they did just because people could use them for calling. Today, nobody's more or less calling that much on them. They're using it for gaming, or they're using it for TikTok or whatever. And in the beginning, you had this worm game that was the best thing on it, right? And eventually the games on the mobile phone is better than you could find on an Xbox in the beginning, right? So I see that they have proven technology from their phone, and they can do it if they want to. What will make it good or bad is the support that you get developing on these platforms. Because I know there's a big difference going on in Alexa, going on in Google, going on the web when it comes to development. And people also need to make money. If nobody makes money on these platforms, you won't have great software and great experiences. So I go back and I want to compare it. About 15 years ago, I was working with Samsung in recruitment, and I realized that Samsung was not all about technology. It was about support. They wanted to be the best company in the world when it came to support to their customers. So if you ever broke a Samsung TV or a dishwasher, you probably have something to say about that experience. And the same thing I bring back into the experience with Alexa, Google, and now Apple, I'll say the ones that are going to be the best one is going to be the one which is best perceived when you have any problems. So in the rest of the world, Alexa is the biggest at the moment, but in Australia, Google has a head lead. Why is that? So we're going to see 2 to 3 or 4 different technology platforms, but the one winning is going to be the one that supports the customer and the developers the best.
No, that point's well taken. And by the way, the name of that game was Snake. And that's an indelible memory for me. Liz, I'm going to turn to you, and I want to get your thoughts on this as well. Is Apple and the HomePod something that you ever think about? Are you buying what this article is selling about? Hey, Apple has done so many things terribly to where now their singular focus on this one little speaker is actually an asset. What stood out to you when you read this?
Sure. So honestly, what stood out to me was the statistic of 15 to 25% of people just using some of the basic commands when it comes to smart home speakers. And I mean, I get it, in the research I've done over the years, they say if you aren't, spending the first 45 minutes on your technology, right, you kind of lose the basics of it. And so I think about that when I'm talking to people about, technology that I'm using, I'm training them on using it. We often find that people just go back to the basics of what time is it, what's the weather, set my alarm, play this song. But again, for folks with disabilities, I'm using all of these smart speakers to eventually do my blinds, open the door, right, turn on and off lights, all these aspects in my home, in my, work environment, any environment that I'm in. So there's so much more there to it. I use, like I said before, I use all of them. I will say that I have an iPhone. I like it for ease of use, but then I have a PC, and that's specifically because of the software I use for my voice is better on my PC and not on a Mac or on my Apple software, if you will, my iOS. So there's just that interchangeability of what works best in specific environments that really stick out to me. After I read the article, I actually called a friend who works in the same field who just so happens to be blind, and he is an Apple fan to the 10th. Like, he is so in love with it, and had the larger HomePod, is now integrating the smaller speakers into his Apple ecosystem. And the thing, I was like, tell me 2 or 3 things that you love about it. Like, why are you so into this, more so than some other folks with disabilities that I know. And I will say, just for individuals in the blind, low vision community, being able to use Apple products has been more popular than using, Alexa or Google, using the smartwatch, navigating, Atlanta, getting on MARTA, on public transit. It's been a game changer. But one of the things that he said that I thought was really interesting, that's so simple, was he said that using the setup for Apple products is so much easier than going with Google and Amazon and being able to use your voice. So as somebody who's non-sighted, from the get-go, opening up the box and setting it up to work for them is a game changer. And so it's as simple as, the setup process of it, not necessarily just that in-depth use, I thought was really interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah. And just something so simple. And, for the grief that we give Apple, it's indisputable that they prioritize accessibility. That's something that they have consistently done over a long period of time, at least in my opinion. And I think you and I might have spoken at a previous point about this. The setup for Google Assistant is something that they have gotten some demerits for in the past because it's so complex. And I know they've been working on it, but no, your point's well taken.
Yeah, I mean, the setup again is just something that, is a game changer for folks because, you want to be independent from the get-go. You don't know if folks are living on their own, if they've got people supporting them. So being able to do that independently, step one all the way to the end, I think is crucial for it as well. You're absolutely right. Apple has been at the forefront of accessibility. They advertise it well, they market it well. it's beautiful. But I will say, while I love my iPhone and it works well for me, there are things that I think about that y'all probably don't. So I have the iPhone mini. I can't tell you how long I waited for it because it's smaller. It's easy for me to handle, right? So that's just something that I'm looking, forward to. Just different things that you think about as somebody with a disability, and some things that you rely on as well. But I will say, my husband, who is also in the tech industry, is an Android fan, and you can do so much more with Android products, right? As far as customization and talking to other technology as well too. So you've just got to really weigh what it is that you're looking for, what your environment is, energy levels as well. I think about throughout the day, and that's a big indicator of what technology I'm using. And if I'm able to use my voice, is my voice tired by 3 o'clock in the afternoon? So what does that mean for me being able to use all of these smart speakers?
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. And so just bringing it back to the headline, and I feel like I need to read this again. Like this is such a shocking headline. Apple was a smart speaker laggard, but its strategy is working. And you know what? The overall takeaway is there's so much surface area to voice technology and conversational AI that may be something that by some definitions isn't working, by other definitions does work very well, thank you, for some people. And yeah, no, I think that's a fascinating takeaway from that. I appreciate all of the comments on that. We're going to move on to story number 3, and I'm going to read this headline as well. This is from Voicebot. iHeartMedia leads $3 million funding round for social audio startup Gimme Radio. So, we've been hearing about social audio in many ways. Social audio is like a lot of things. It started prior to the pandemic, but the pandemic just really ushered it in and accelerated it in a way that it otherwise would have taken a decade to do. And Johan, I'm going to start with you, and then go to Liz and Naresh on this. But with Wanderword and your focus on the entertainment sector, this Gimme Radio sounds like an interesting company. It involves something that I think will be integral to almost every entertainment concept at some point, which is tipping. And whether that's related to crypto or not, doesn't have to be, but that's a conversation that usually takes place. This story covers a lot of ground. I want to get your thoughts on, what do you think about Gimme Radio? What do you think about this story?
First of all, it sounds like a new thing, and I know for sure where I come from in Sweden, we always try to try new things. It's in our DNA, so to speak. So we're early adopters, and I think a lot of people would love to try it out. In general, I think to change a type of market into cutting away unnecessary parts for the benefit of in this case, the people playing on the radio or the artist, that's great. Obviously, some people are not going to like it because they're going to miss out some money. Usually it's the big dragon, so to speak, so nobody feels sorry for them. But in this case, it's cutting away some areas where it's not needed and getting directly to the customers. So to me, it sounds not only fun, but I think it's good for the market. And I also think it gives opportunities to have interactions within that. So when you do it close to the audience, you can have interactions and not only have questionnaires, but let them steer what is played and stuff like that in a new way. So I like the idea, and I'm definitely going to try it out. There's hundreds of ways I'm going to connect it to my business, but let's not go there now.
Yeah, no, I think this story has a lot of implications for you and what you're doing. But I agree. I love the idea of being able to interact with content creators, whether it's game makers, whether it's musicians, whether it's authors. And I think if technology does anything for us that's worthwhile, it'll help create some of those opportunities to bring us closer to people that otherwise we might not have exposure to. Liz, I want to turn to you, and I want to get your thoughts on this story as well, from your perspective and everything that you think about. What stood out?
So I'm a music head. I love going to concerts. It's just a favorite pastime of mine. This to me was probably one of my favorite articles that you put out there for us to read, just because of that interaction, that being able to be online, it being fully accessible, and you get this incredible experience of, seeing your performer, interacting with them, being able to pay for merchandise, just as if you're going to a venue to see your, favorite band. Bradley, you and I talked about the pandemic and really what that meant for people with disabilities and accessibility. Don't get me wrong, I am Zoom fatigued. I get tired of it. It's difficult when you're online all the time. And, at the end of the day, your friends are like, let's have a virtual happy hour, or, let's do this and that. And it's exhausting. But for folks with disabilities, the pandemic, as someone who is still in quarantine, still having to stay safe, still, being careful every day, and not leaving the house much, the pandemic opened up a world for me and for folks with disabilities. All of a sudden, we were getting invited to concerts online. We were getting invited to parties that may have been in an inaccessible venue or someone's home that we couldn't get into. And so all of a sudden, I had friends going to museums across the world, right? Interacting in different meetups, meeting people that they never thought they would meet, because we were forced to move into this virtual online world, if you will. So to me, this is just another way of bringing entertainment and interaction into the homes of folks that could really benefit from it. Social isolation is such a big thing that we're dealing with in the disability community, as well as the aging community, especially through the pandemic. And, we've got to also talk about the availability of Wi-Fi for folks and the affordability of it. But if somebody is set up in a way, this is incredible to be able to have entertainment and social interaction to that level.
No, I think that's something that ought to stay at the forefront of the conversation is, and this is something that we had talked about. It's easy, to say, well, we've had our time with Zoom, and let's file it away, now or at some point or whenever, when the pandemic is agreed upon, that it's run its course. And that would be a big mistake, because a lot of the lessons that we've learned, it's like anything else. There's some stuff that will stay with us and change us and evolve us, and then there's stuff that won't. And getting the two correct, and figuring out which one is which is critical. And I think with what iHeartRadio is doing, some of these digital lessons we've learned, some of the stuff that you were reflecting on, informs what we'll do moving forward. Even if the pandemic, you snapped your finger and it was gone, a lot of this stuff will stick around for reasons that are very valuable and helpful. And it's great to hear your thoughts on that. Naresh, I want to turn to you and get your thoughts on this story as well. What stood out to you just about Gimme Radio, or any particular aspect of this piece?
So I think it's the timing that stood out for me. How we see things could be like saying, okay, someone developed this piece of software that is great, people can interact, but at the same time, it reaches directly to the consumer. But why was it introduced at this time of the year? It's interesting. In 1992, there's a sci-fi writer that is actually, his name is Neil Stephenson. He coined the term metaverse to describe a 3D virtual space. Fast forward 2022, we're at this 3D world now that is filled with AR and VR and crypto, and Facebook changed its name to Meta. And the reason behind is that Facebook could have been Meta 10 years ago, but it waited strategically, where it bought a lot of companies that actually supported Facebook to be Meta, right? For example, they bought the Oculus, so they now have the VR headset space. They bought Instagram, and now people, think about 10 years ago, building a community, how long it's going to take, how much effort you have to put in building a community. Now you can build a community, it's like going to an ice cream shop and asking for a caramel ice cream. It's so easy. You can easily build a community. And I think the timing now, with all the technology that is supporting connecting people, which means like it's instead of like a B2C, it's like a C2C now, kind of a space. And the technologies, as I said, is supporting, and the support combined with, Tyler, who's the CEO of Gimme Radio, his experience with like Apple Music and Google Music and Napster formerly that he's worked with, they brought this to the table. And I think it's a great move from their end.
Complete agreement. Yeah, no, and just a great series of perspectives on that across the board. It's I love stories like this. It's technology doing what technology ought to be doing. It's like making the world slightly more tolerable and enjoyable place, and it's a beautiful thing. We're going to go on to our last story here, and I'm going to read this headline. This is an interesting one. This is from Time Magazine. Artificial intelligence can now craft original jokes, and that's no laughing matter. So this story covers a lot of ground as well. Really interesting. We're going to link to this and all the stories in the notes when we put the podcast out and on YouTube as well. Liz, I'm going to start with you, and then go to Naresh and Johan to close us out here. But I come from the thought, the frame of mind that you got to be able to joke about everything, and the more serious something is, you actually need to joke about it more, because that's just sort of how we advance discourse. It's as Will Rogers said, you can tell somebody anything as long as you make them laugh. And I think there's some truth to that. And conversely, if you don't make them laugh, you can't tell somebody anything. And I think that's probably emblematic of our society. The thought process here is that a lot of the biases that have not been eliminated in our culture show up in AI, and then consequently, if AI is telling jokes, you're going to show up there too. I want to get your thoughts on what stood out to you about this piece, your takeaways, and ultimately your thoughts on whether AI will get to the point where it can do something like tell a joke.
Yeah. I thought this was a really interesting article, because then I was just thinking, this robot's just telling jokes and people are hanging out in a comedy club listening to this robot, right? So I've worked in the field of assistive technology. There's robotics everywhere, right? We talk about telepresence robots, and there's robots that, we've got research teams working on that can help people shave, scratch an itch, just do amazing things to help folks with a range of disabilities. So this particular, even just the physicalness of this robot, I've seen this robot in person before, and have actually worked with this particular robot. When I did, it was interesting because it was targeted towards individuals living with autism and helping with some of the day-to-day social interaction, right? Prompting and what have you. So I love this. And yeah, you're absolutely right, Bradley. We have to be able to laugh to cope, right, at our obstacles, right, at being able to overcome things and just see the humor. I feel like humor and laughter and all of that is an impeccable survival tool. It'll be interesting to see how AI and humor evolve over the years. But honestly, what I thought about when I was reading through this is it would be so cool to see something like this help someone with mood detection, right? If they're having a conversation, if somebody is feeling, it made me think about one of the largest minorities within the disability group, which is individuals living with mental health issues, right? You can't see that when you're interacting with someone. It's a non-visible disability is what we say, and it's a struggle out there. And there's so many taboo topics around it as well. But what about that technology that can support those people, right? So we've got robots out there that can prompt kiddos with autism to look at the clock and tell the time, or pay attention, or what have you, or that even mimic facial expressions so that person can understand, this is the face you make when you're happy, this is the face when you're worried, or what have you. And so I think about that evolvement more so. So if somebody is feeling down, can that robot detect that by facial features, by tone of voice, and tell a joke, right? Or help them out that way. So just thinking even bigger than just having this little robot in the comedy club telling jokes and what have you.
So it sounds like you're like me. You see promise in a story like this.
Yeah. I mean, the humor is there. I get that. I think it's very cool. It's so interesting thinking about a robot just detecting that, and what we as humans think of humor, and just talking about it building on our background, our history, the context there, right? So yeah, I do see it promising, but I'd love to see it even just do more than just tell jokes, right? I think that there's so much more that it can do to support people.
Perfect. Naresh, I'm going to turn to you. Your thoughts on this story as well.
I think this is a super interesting topic, especially in my world of data and analytics and everything, because in raw sense, it's sentiment analysis, right? So sentiments could be anything. And in this instance, it's laughter, or being able to make people laugh. And it's nothing but contextual mining of, I would say, texts, which identifies and extracts subjective information in a source material. And the source material over here is history of jokes from all over the world and over extensive periods of time. So someone was able to extract that information, but the information earlier used to be used by companies, and it used to be a marketing thing where a company would go out and identify, how is my brand perceived in the world? But now with the advancements in artificial intelligence and machine learning and deep learning and all these neural networks that have come to support this sentiment analysis, we can zero it down to an individual or a group. For example, in this group, it's a group of people that came down to actually hear a joke. And the article clearly states that the robot can actually pause, or it can speak fast, or it can repeat itself. And how is it doing is because, they've taken data from a variety of joke places, I would say, and they've actually figured it out to actually react to a set individual or a group. It's not used just in the jokes, it's used in every fashion. For example, it's interesting. Elon Musk had an interview where someone asked, hey, so you're going to put a chip in the brain. Is that something that, you think is going to be acceptable? And he said, well, you already have a cell phone, which is a physical extension of yourself, because my cell phone reacts differently when I wake up in the morning versus what your cell phone reacts. Your cell phone might say, hey, today's music. Mine might say, hey, what's happening in a different part of the world that my flight tickets have booked, or whatever it is. And it reads my sentiment. It's saying I wake up at X amount of time, and it's helping me out. And the same thing with Alexas and the smart speakers and everything. It's actually an extension of ourselves. And the reason we start laughing is because we are actually getting the joke, or we are seeing through the joke, and that's why we're starting to laugh. So it's super interesting.
Excellent. And Johan, I'm going to give you the last word on this. Want to get your thoughts on the story and what stood out to you.
Well, obviously, it's you start thinking about the future. If, like you said, Liz, will there be robots telling the jokes? And for me, I just cut to the chase and said, no, I probably would enjoy sitting in a bar listening to the actual person doing the jokes. And I also remembered when I was a kid, first time listened to Eddie Murphy, when somebody criticized him about just saying cuss words, and that's the only thing he said. And he said that, it's not only about saying the words, right? You need to, also have the story, and you just have to do the facial expression and stuff like that. So analyzing the jokes and just saying the same thing as somebody else did and get people laugh let's just cut it, because there's so many more things to it. How you walk when you present it, how you're actually saying in the tone of voice and stuff. So I think we're going to help a lot of people, obviously, that they can be getting jokes and laughing. If it's going to be in a robot, or if it's going to be in your phone or your Alexa, it doesn't really matter. But it's some people are just going to feel it's really, really great, and some people are just still going to stick to going to the bar and listening to a stand-up comedian, and because they like that person. So I think it's a great compliment to what is out there, and I think it's fun technology, because doing this is really hard. Making people laugh is really hard, and if you can master that, I think you've come a long way. And so I'm fascinated about the genre of actually making a robot that can make jokes so people laugh.
No, I think that point's really interesting. I think that you're right. Is even if AI were able to do something flawlessly, there's still going to be people who want human beings to deliver that service, and that's a whole other rabbit hole to go down on another episode. Johan, Naresh, Liz, appreciate y'all being part of This Week in Voice. Appreciate you taking the time and sharing your perspective and expertise with not just me, but the audience as well.
Thank you so much for having
Thank
us
you.
here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
For This Week in Voice, Season 6, Episode 6. Thank you for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks for listening. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast provider, until next time.